Okay, I was gonna click from the beginning for a second. Yeah, I'm definitely not starting over from the very beginning. I mean, I gotta finish all of Grisaia first. Okay, so I figured out what the hell was going on with my camera last night. So I just had to configure some settings. I had to just change a few settings. I figured out that if I turn down my exposure, as long as I don't have my exposure on my camera set to maximum, the motion, like, will be a lot smoother. Like, the camera won't drop so many frames anymore. Yeah, I have to drop the exposure a bit and increase the gain a bit. Still roughly the same picture quality and, well, much smoother frame rate from the camera. And honestly, picked a pretty interesting time to stop the last stream. I literally stopped the previous Grisaia stream right as we were going to get into Amane's backstory. Yeah, so she was the lone survivor of a bus crash that claimed the lives of 13 of her classmates and assumably the bus drivers too. So the year was 2000 and something. And present day in Grisaia was like 2011, if I'm not mistaken. So this was just a couple years before that, so this would technically be in the 2000s if it were a real event. So I'm assuming if I just Google up, what was it, Takeyono bus crash? I assume I'm just not gonna find any real events that... I assume I'm not gonna find any real events. Takeyomo, I was definitely close in remembering the name. Alright, so... Takezono bus crash. I want to see what shows up. Okay, it's just all mentions of Fruit of Grisaia so far. And some pictures of buses and crashes. Yeah, it's basically all mentions of Fruit of Grisaia. So I'm assuming this was not like a real event or anything. Alright, so... Alright, this is from Amane's point of view. This is, I guess, Yuji reading her diary. So I'm guessing this is maybe word for word what's in the diary? Alright, so I guess we'll start with the reading. Hopefully I'm going to be ready for this backstory here. I mean, Makana's backstory was pretty tough to digest as well. Same goes for Michiru's. I don't know which one was just more emotional, which one was just, like, hard of the stomach. Like, I don't know who had it worse, Makana or Michiru. I mean, both had it terrible. And now I'm gonna get to see Amane's backstory. Ah, whatever. When I opened my eyes, I was in darkness. I couldn't see a thing. I blinked repeatedly and slowly counted to 10, but that didn't change. I couldn't even tell if my surroundings were really dark or if my eyes weren't working. In the blackness so deep I couldn't see the palm of my hand in front of my face. I heard moaning voices from all around me. Painful hacking coughs. Screams of agony. My ears at least were functional. As I repeated quiet, calming breaths, the scent of gasoline tickled my nose. And with that stimulation, the haze of confusion lifted slightly. And I remembered that I was inside a bus. Groping around my surroundings, I vaguely realized that I was lying on top of something soft. When I tried to sit up, I hit my head sharply against the seat. I reached up to my eyes to check if my glasses had been knocked crooked, only discovered they were on my face in the first place. Yeah, so she used to wear glasses, and maybe I guess after this incident she stopped wearing them? Did she just simply not bother to get a new prescription after somehow getting out of this bus crash? I don't know. Groped around the area frantically. Again, my hand found something strangely soft and warm. It was the heat of a living thing. Realizing with a start that I was touching another person, I reflexively jerked my hand back. Have you regained consciousness? Huh? Yeah. If you could move, I'd appreciate it if you could get off me. Oh, sorry. Finally understanding that someone was pinned under my body, I fumbled in search of a foothold. But the floor my feet were searching for wasn't there. What do you mean there was no floor? Watch your step. The ceiling of this bus has become a wall. So the bus is on its side, okay. To put it more simply, the bus is on its side. Okay, we get it. Overturned? Yeah, the bus fell off a cliff. I'd be, like, in shock if it wasn't on its side or anything like that. As I repeated that word out loud in an attempt to process its meaning, further understanding of the situation flooded into my mind. This was the inside of a school bus. On the way back from our summer training camp, our bus had fallen off a cliff, with us still inside. Please don't let me rush you, but could you perhaps get moving? You've been stepping on my left arm for some time now. Sorry. That hurts. Don't just thrash around. Oh, I'm so sorry. Is that a vocal tick of yours? Tell me your name. I'd like to be able to curse you and to deliver your well-deserved beating. I'm sorry. It's a joke. Yeah, this was Yuji's, well, now deceased sister that didn't survive the bus crash. I'm Suo Amane. Well, she's Suo Amane. Right. Suo-san, I know you by name and appearance, but this would be the first time we've spoken, I believe. Ah, yes, it's a pleasure to meet you. You don't have to talk politely to me. I'm a first year like you, and if possible, I'd like to save the introductions for after you've removed yourself from on top of me. About to cry from the pain? I'm sorry. That's the 5th time. Listen to me, the more you say the word sorry, the less meaning it holds. The next time you apologize to me, I'm going to get angry. Spare me or oof. Move to your left. The exit is in that direction. Yeah, come to think of it, I know someone, well, not in real life, but online, who also just says sorry too much, so... Yeah, I should definitely cut Amane some slack here. Come on, Kazuki, cut her some slack. I knew the name Kazami Kazuki. It was the name of the top incoming student. The girl who had been chosen as our class representative to deliver the greeting speech at our entrance ceremony this spring. Kazuki sounded like a boy's name, and the girl herself appeared somewhat absent-minded, always walking around with a sleepy look on her face. And yet there was something about her that suggested the cold sharpness of a blade. We belonged to the same basketball team and participated in a training camp together. But I shied away from the foreboding aura she projected. In the end, we hadn't spoken so much as once during the trip. The interior of the bus was scattered with debris, and every foothold was uncertain, but Kazami Kazuki quickly crawled her way through, dragged herself out of a shattered window, and turned back to offer her hand to me. Come on, take my hand. Thank you. It seems we've survived for the moment. Here, your glasses. They are yours, yes? Ah, yes, thank you. Wait, so... You mean to tell me that they fell off a cliff, but the glasses didn't break? The moment I replaced the glasses on my head, I drew a harsh breath at the sight of the bus we'd been riding in. The roof was smashed, the windows all broken. The vehicle was completely overturned, its belly exposed. White smoke was pouring from the area of the still active engine. We need to get away faster or we'll be in danger. At this rate, that thing might explode. As that fear ran through my mind, Kazami Kazuki glanced briefly at my face with the usual sleepy expression, then started lightly. It's fine. Rest assured, vehicles exploding after this sort of accident only happens in movies. How'd you know what I was thinking? You were staring at the smoking engine with a terrified look on your face. Even a child could figure that one out. Now then, who shall we save first? Now that you know there won't be an explosion, I was expecting the next words out of your mouth would be we have to rescue everyone right away. Was I mistaken? Please don't look at me as if I were some sort of telepath. I'm just trying to cut to the chase. Who shall we save first? I'll let you decide. 1, our teacher. 2, your best friend. 3, the wounded. Whose rescue would you prioritize? Alright, so let me guess. Was the teacher the bus driver? Why are you making me decide? I mean, I don't know who else would be logically driving it. It's something like a simple psychology test. I thought I'd use your answer to see what sort of person you are. Who would you say first? Answering a question with a question will get you a reputation as an idiot. Or do you mean to say that reserving your answer is the only answer you can come up with? In that case, I'll mark you down as a girl without a shred of decisiveness or ability to assess her situation. Is that alright with you? I'm gonna guess that's a no. Very well, I'll decide. Let's save the captain first. Why the captain? Because I hate her. Huh? In response to the previous question, I wouldn't choose option 1, 2, or 3, but rather 4. The people I hate come first. Isn't that kind of cheating? I don't recall specifically limiting you to those 3 choices. It's also a test to see how you respond when the correct answer isn't given to you as an option. That's just a trick question, and why would you save the people you hate first? We're gonna have to do this for all 12 people in there, you know? If the last one left is someone I hate, I definitely think this is too much of a pain in the ass and just, I guess, let them die. That's your reason? Makes sense to me. Prefer to get unpleasant things out of the way as soon as possible. I tend to finish my summer homework before the vacation even begins. I sort of get it. Maybe? I don't get it. You don't need to get it. Come help me, if you'd be so kind. Ah, yeah, sorry. You don't have to get it. To be honest, I found it very difficult to understand her thoughts. But I did understand the word genius was probably created to describe this sort of person. There were 14 people riding on that bus, including the team's advisors, so... 14? Oh. Eventually, 11 people emerged from its wreckage, together with one small dog that belonged to a team member. The remaining 3 were dead. 2 were killed instantly when the bus fell. The other, still conscious immediately after the accident, rolled herself into a ball and moaned for 10 minutes before she died. God, that sucks! God, that's sad. Among the 11 survivors, 4 were wounded, and 7 somehow weren't? One had broken, oh my god, broken both her legs. One had struck her head and suffered a laceration. One had received a gastro abdomen from a sharp object. And the man who should have been our guardian, the teacher who had been our team's advisor, was unconscious and showed no signs of waking. That, more than anything else, filled our hearts with gloom. None of us could get our minds around the situation we were in. Clutching our knees to our chests, we sat on the ground in the daze. I believe we should attend to the wounded first of all. What do you think? But that heavy silence was soon broken. Kazami Kazuki spoke in a perfectly normal tone of voice. When I raised my head in response to her clear, firm words, I saw that she was addressing our group's official leader, the team captain. This is exactly the sort of situation where you need to maintain control, senpai. Yes, I'm well aware of my responsibilities. Thank you very much, but what can we possibly do in these circumstances? Would you allow me a counter-argument? Go ahead. There's no guarantee whatsoever that help will arrive if we simply wait. If you feel you lack the capacity to lead in this situation, I can take on that role in your stead. Your decision? Don't give me that. If you make a mistake in judgment and things get worse, who do you think would take the blame? You're rather composed to still be worrying about such things in a situation like this. Sorry? What was that? I didn't quite hear you. It was nothing important, so does this mean you feel able to assume leadership? I don't need your concern. Ritsu, come over here. Okay, I was about to say that looks kind of like Mitsuru, but... No, I see, it's not Mitsuru. I can't get over how Ritsu kind of looks like Mitsuru. Well, only kind of. I feel like a spectator on a YouTube stream, what a ride. I feel like a spectator on my own stream too, not gonna lie. I'm just watching, well, the bus crash already happened, just what happened after the bus crash is what's happening right now. So I'm getting into, well, one of the characters' backstories right now. She was the lone survivor of a bus crash that killed 13 of her classmates, and also, like, her team captain. So, the 2 characters on screen I'm looking at are dead. This is all just, like, a flashback, a look at the past. These 2 characters, I assume, are just straight up dead right now. And you can at least handle first aid, right? Get started right away. What? No, I can't do that. Just because my parents are doctors doesn't mean I know automatically. You're still better than the complete amateur, aren't you? Stop whining and take care of it. But... Ritsu wrung her hands in front of her chest. I completely understood her feelings. Taking on the role of doctor simply because of her parents' occupation? The responsibility was far too grave. It wasn't as though she had inherited their medical skills, and superficial knowledge wouldn't be enough in this situation. Team captain, Chiaki and Ritsu, a girl who'd always played the role of her devoted underling. As a mere first year, I didn't know much about their relationship. The fact was that I'd never seen Ritsu disobey an order from the captain. Well, what do you mean? This is all backstory right now we're looking at. So all but 1 people died in the bus crash. Well, that happened in the game, in this visual novel here. I understand, I'll start with Haruka-san. What are you saying? Mr. Ochi is to come first. But both Haruka-san's legs are fractured, it's very serious. I'm telling you to look at Mr. Ochi first. Kazuki watched with a disdainful eyes of a spectator to an ugly farce as Ritsu swallowed her complaints. As her doctor walked away with sagging shoulders, Kazuki approached Sakashita for the 2nd time. Captain Sakashita, may I have permission to survey the surrounding area? Don't just wander off by yourself. Why are you always trying to disrupt the group like this? Suo-san, I'd like you to accompany me, if you don't mind. Huh? Okay. Excuse me, Kazami-san? It should be alright if I'm not by myself, yes? I'm trying to be considerate here my own way. It should be easier for you to push everyone around if I'm not here. Let's be on our way, Suo-san. Oh, wait! As I chased after Kazami Kazuki, I saw the captain's expression out of the corner of my eye. She was glaring at me, making no attempt to hide her displeasure. Her eyes asked, "Are you taking that woman's side?" In response, I offered a quick bow of my head. I didn't understand myself whether that gesture was an apology for siding with Kazuki or a silent attempt to convey, "I haven't betrayed you." Either way, some instinct inside me had judged that following Kazuki was the correct decision. Okay, there's no way they're actually in the city. I'm guessing this is a flashback within the flashback, right? When we were grade schoolers, it was well known that an 8-year-old child had taken a special prize at a district painting contest. As the painting had been exhibited among other children's work, that was our only award, but it might have well been taken the overall prize otherwise. Our class took a trip to see her piece on a display at the district assembly hall. Even with my immature eye for art, I could sense something inexpressible in words from that painting. Something that nonetheless moved my heart. And my impression of that work, and the name of the genius who painted it, were deeply etched into my mind. Kazami Kazuki. She wasn't blessed with talent as a painter alone. She could do anything she tried, anything at all. Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but on her first attempt she could usually produce adequate results. If it was a field she found particularly difficult, it might take 3 days of effort for her to reach average skill. Those are the rumors anyway. According to those who knew her, she lives in a different world, or I can't believe that she's a human being, or she can see things normal people can't. At the time I was astonished that anyone could inspire such stories, many of which were so overblown that they took on a tinge of the occult. But when we entered the same school in the same year, even joining the same team, the girl appeared perfectly normal, even if a little standoffish. Even so, I could vaguely sense that her true nature was somehow different from that of an ordinary person. To be honest, I had avoided her as a result. And now I was alone with her for the first time under these circumstances. Although I followed as instructed, I couldn't find anything to say to her, and she was equally silent. The two of us just trudged on, not exchanging a single word. The ground at our feet was rugged and hard, and rock walls loomed on both sides. When I looked straight up, there was nothing but trees and sky. He seemed to have fallen in some sort of a fissure, a crack in the earth. The walls were maybe 10 meters tall at the lowest point. Not so high as to rule out climbing, but on both sides of the rock, face slanted inward as they rose up, hanging over us. With this pronounced of an overhang, climbing with bare hands seemed impossible, and even with tools it would likely be difficult. Apparently, Kazami Kazuki had been thinking along the same lines. She came to stop a little ways ahead of me, placed her hand on one of the slanting walls of rock, and began to strike it with a stone she had picked up off the ground. What is that going to tell you? Hey, where's the rest of the dialogue anyways? Oh. I gotta press F8 to read it? Finally open your mouth to ask me that, of all things. Don't you have other questions to ask me? Other questions? Such as, how can we climb these walls, or perhaps can we get back to the road, or what should we do next, among many others. Or the question that's likely foremost in your mind, why did you ask me to come, or so I would imagine. You're right. Then I'll tell you straight, I chose you because you're the type who can't refuse when pressured. In your case, when asked would you like to come along, you'll agonize over your decision, but when ordered to come with me, you'll obey without much thought. Yes? What makes you think so? It's a conclusion I drew from the results of our little psych test earlier. Was I mistaken? Yeah, she was probably right. When my mother asked me what should we have for our snack today, I would answer, what do you want, Mom? When she simply told me we're having cakes today, I was relieved because I wouldn't have to choose. Given multiple choice, I would waver indecisively, and when given a single path, I'd follow it immediately. That was just my personality. If I run my mouth, who knows what she'll pick out of my head next, or so I'm seeing on your face. But personally, I prefer if you didn't get too wary over this. As she spoke, Kazami Kazuki removed her cell phone from her pocket and looked into the screen. Ah, no signal after all. How's yours? Huh? Oh. I hurriedly pulled my phone out of my school uniform, but as expected, the screen was also displaying the words, no signal. No good, mine is out of range as well. No surprise. Kazuki turned off her phone immediately and slid it back into her pocket. You should turn yours off as well. The battery consumption is surprisingly rapid when it's trying to find a signal. Yeah. It wasn't as discouraging as I would have expected to find our cell phones were useless. To tell the truth, I checked mine soon after escaping the bus. Of course, the screen also displayed no signal then. Finding that was still the case prompted a little more than the feeling of resignation. Well, expected as much. We were within a long tunnel-like crevice. Maybe if we just kept following it, particularly because of wishful thinking like that, I wasn't in a state of despair at our situation. Another factor was the strange sense of security that came from being near this girl named Kazami Kazuki, as though I'd found firm, reliable ground to stand on. If I'm with this girl, it'll work out somehow. Her strangely powerful presence let me think such irresponsible thoughts somewhere deep down. Situation can't be called favorable? Of course not. There was a heavily overgrown jungle visible in the direction Kazuki was pointing. It was a dense forest, seemingly devoid of animal life, that seemed to actively refuse human entry. The thick wall of vibrant green almost seemed pleasant at a glance, and yet it was obvious that a single step inside would find you in an environment far too harsh to support human life. Even if you were to advance by hacking through the thick grass and bushes rising over your head, the distance you could advance in one day would be pretty limited. And in avoiding the tall trees that grew close enough together as to block out the light of day, you'd quickly lose any grasp of your own position anyway. If we'd been lucky, we might have discovered some traces of human entry, but there doesn't seem to be any point in getting our hopes up. If there's even one path human travel, follow it and you'll find a place where humans live. But the jungle in front of us showed no signs of such intrusion. Even so, I had some hope we might stand a chance by pushing our way boldly through the woods, but that thought was shattered by what Kazami Kazuki told me next. Take a look at this. She had a compass we had used at the training camp for orienteering, one of her recreational activities. The needle that should have always sought north was pointing to the northwest. And when she turned to face a different direction, it didn't move within the compass. What's going on? To put it simply, the needle isn't working, meaning it's not functional as a compass. No way. I would. Most likely deviation. Take a look at the walls around us. The walls? As I looked up in confusion at the rock face looming above us, she picked up a stone lying at her feet and again struck the wall sharply. The sound it produced was a high-pitched blinking, like what you might expect from a hard metal surface. Some of the rock is vitrified. Most likely it was rapidly cooled after momentary exposure to an extremely high temperature, rendering it amorphous. I'm sorry. Your language is too technical. I don't understand. It's similar to what you'd see after a volcano's lava cools, but the range is just too large. Too small for it to be an airburst, though. Probably a meteorite, I suppose? An actual meteorite? Micro black hole impact seems a bit unlikely, so I would think a small-scale meteorite exploded before reaching the surface of the Earth, and a particularly large fragment fell here, perhaps? And that's why the compass isn't functioning? Entirely likely. The scattered fragments from its impact may have contained heavy minerals, perhaps leaving a number responsible for the concentrated mass of magnetic material. Under that theory, this unnatural terrain also makes sense. What do you think? I don't really. If Kazami Kazuki thought so, it was probably the truth. At the very least, I wasn't about to come up with any other possibilities. Well, the intermediate environment is composed of rock in which not even weeds can grow. The area is surrounded by walls structurally impossible to climb. Our path forward ends in an impenetrable jungle. Our cell phones can't connect, and even our compass is of no use. A first-class disaster. Things are getting interesting. Interesting, you say? If I sounded callous, I apologize. However, I was thinking you might feel a little less anxious if you sent some confidence in my words. Thanks for your consideration, but I think you should avoid probably talking like that in front of the other girls. I suppose. Although she nodded, I didn't feel that she was convinced by my words. Precisely because we're in such a bad situation, a confident leader who could pull off this sort of all-knowing god act would be ideal. But she wasn't the leader of our group. By rank, our teacher was first. The team captain Sakashita was second, and vice captain Okabe was third. Or should have been. But unfortunately, Okabe-senpai had died when the bus fell. Still, a first year like Kazuki had very little say in the team's decisions. I wonder if Captain Sakashita would be so kind as to transfer a leadership position to me? I think it would be more efficient that way, as it wouldn't need to waste time in submitting reports on every little thing. Can I ask you something? What is it? Captain Sakashita. Well, a question you're uncomfortable voicing? Do you maybe have an idea of what I want to ask you? What's this all of a sudden? Might you be mistaking me for God? You gave me that psych test before, right? That question? In other words, since Captain Sakashita said the teacher's treatment comes first, you're curious what sort of conclusions can be drawn from that as an answer to the test? Exactly. I think you have a rough idea if I don't spell it out for you, don't you? Captain Sakashita is a highly dependent type. Despite only feeling content when she's running the show, when she's faced with a decision that bears the weight of responsibility, she'll instantly look over her shoulder in search of help. In other words, she wants to ask I'll take control here if that's acceptable. For that, she needs Mr. Oshi. Understand? I think so. I'm not saying that's wrong, mind you. She's a student, so it's actually perfectly natural. But in her case, I doubt she's any different outside of school. I expect she pushes her father around at home. That sort of childish desire for superiority disgusts me. I'm sorry. I got sidetracked onto a worthless topic, didn't I? As Kazuki apologized for babbling, her expression was a cheerful one appropriate for her age. But that bright smile was frightening under the circumstances. I felt sure of it. This person was attached to nothing. She grabbed hold of anything she thought she needed, and she cast aside anything that outlived its necessity. Maybe that was just another part of being a genius? As these thoughts ran through my head, Kazuki suddenly turned her back to me and mumbled a few words. That's not true. At that brief sense, I felt a chill like cold fingers running down my spine. What's not? I think it's about time we returned. It would be unpleasant if they started thinking we made a run for it by ourselves. If you compare the human brain to an engine, Kazuki's must have been operating at a far higher RPM than ours. She was constantly maintaining a speed of rotation that would quickly cause a normal person to overheat. I looked down at Kazuki's feet as she walked a few paces ahead of me. She was wearing the standard white sneakers specified by our school. Since the girl cast a shadow and didn't appear to be floating, apparently she wasn't a ghost or other supernatural apparition. What's so funny? I'm sorry. I was imagining your thoughts at the moment and found them very amusing. I'm sure you would. Don't sulk, please. Let me just say for the record, I'm not a ghost and I'm not God talking human form in your dream either. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Thought of what? I was wondering if you might be some kind of spirit, but I hadn't thought I might be the one dying. Having a dream about an all-knowing savior. Even if I hadn't said it, I would expect you would have thought of it yourself within another 10 minutes or so. You're a weird girl. I suppose so. My mother told me something similar when I was 1.5 years old. And you actually remember? It's a joke. Wait, what part of that is the joke? Doesn't matter. Feel free to decide for yourself. I was actually understanding her less the longer we talked. The one thing I did understand was that Kazami Kazuki's jokes aren't funny in the slightest. To put it briefly, it's a bleak environment. Having returned to the site of the accident, Kazuki and I explained the situation to Captain Sakashita, showing her the compass and its non-functional needle. She didn't stir from the rock she'd been sitting on. When we finished our stories, she sighed deeply, leaned forward to take her head in their hands and understand with a brief, I understand. And how are the wounded? The captain's only response was to slightly raise one hand and point. In the direction she indicated, Koide Ritsu is examining the wounded while trying to hold back her tears. What do you think, Koide-san? Mr. Ochi doesn't have any large external wounds. I think it's a light concussion. If we let him lie down for a while, he'll probably regain consciousness. Ryuka-san has fractured her left shin and her right knee. The bones didn't break the surface, but both are completely broken. She's conscious, but in a great deal of pain. Sakurai-san has a laceration to her abdomen. At the moment of the accident, something sharp from the wound, probably a shattered bottle or something, pierced her stomach. The bleeding's already beginning to slow. Kaneda-san has a large cut on her forehead above her right eye. I think she probably hit it against something. The bleeding has stopped. And? And what? You really just examined them? Haven't you performed any treatment? I can't. We don't have any tools. Even if we did, there's no way I could do anything. It's simply a matter of returning the broken bones to their original position and fixing them there and sewing together lacerations. I've never done that sort of thing. I'm telling you, I can't. If you think it's so simple, then you do it. Alright, could you bring some water to a boil? Huh? We used the camp stove in the trip, remember? Please boil as much water as possible and make saline solution. If you could excavate the first aid box and fishing tackle while you're at it, I'd appreciate it. Kazami-san, do you have experience treating broken bones? None. All I have is knowledge I've gained from books. How about you? None. Well, that's only to be expected. Are you going to be able to do this? If there's someone with experience and confidence, I'll gladly let them take over. I wouldn't want people to think of me as a presumptuous job-stealing upstart. Kazuki turned around quickly to face a depressed group of girls, raised their right hand and asked, does anyone have medical experience? No one raised their hand in response. No one even met Kazuki's eyes. If no one has any experience, then it hardly matters who steps up, does it? Or would you rather conclude it's their fault for getting injured and leave them to their own devices? That's over the top. Personally, I think I could have done something I'd try as the worst of all regrets. Let's get started. First, Kaneda-san's head laceration. Because you hate Kaneda-san? No, it's because Kaneda-san has the most minor injury. If the more seriously injured die while you're examining those with minor wounds, you'll save the effort of a useless medical examination, you see? Why go silent there? I told a joke, so you have to laugh at least a little or be embarrassed. Ha 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 ha. Just wondering, do you have any friends? Let's see, at present I suppose only you. As I was saying, why the silence? Should I laugh? I suppose so, and then I'll cry. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with this conversation. Following Kazuki's instructions, everyone with the physical energy and willpower to move cooperate to retrieve the first aid kit, camping equipment, and fishing tackle from the overturned bus. Kazuki gathered the tools she thought would be useful. Passed them to Koide Ritsu to be disinfected, and began examining the wounded while waiting for the water to come to a boil. As promised, she looked at Grisaia and her head laceration first. Well, are there any irregularities in your hearing? Any noticeable difference between what you hear from your left and right ear? I don't think so. I see. Next, please give me your right hand. Kaneda's wound had already been disinfected, sutured shut, and covered with a roll of bandage. When Kazuki said she planned to use a fishing hook to stitch up the cut, I couldn't help raising doubts about whether such a procedure could be hygienic, but... I mean, I'm guessing you wouldn't have anything else in a situation like this, right? When she responded, I could suppose we could try sticking it together with super glue. I'm sure that would make for a prettier result. I decided I should probably keep my mouth shut. After I did nothing but silently record Kazuki's words in the memo pad we were using as a makeshift medical record. Does this hurt? Kazuki took a firm grip on Kaneda's right hand and dug her nails firmly into her index finger. Ow, of course it hurts! I'm sorry. How about your left hand then? Does it feel pain the same way? Ow, ow, ow! Look, I said it hurts! It almost seemed like Kazuki was enjoying watching Kaneda squirm in pain. A question leaked out of my mouth. Hey, what exactly are you doing? She struck her head, so I'm attempting to determine if there's any difference in the effectiveness of her sense organs or nervous system between two parts of her body. I only noticed when I was sewing her wound, but her left eye is slightly esotropic or lazy. Her sphere of vision differs between her left and right eye. Huh? I didn't even notice. I hurriedly added the word esotropic to the record in the notebook. You, I'm sorry. What was your name? Grisaia. Oh, that's right. Saya-san, that's a nice name. You think so? Yes, I'll have to remember it in case I ever decide to keep a pet dog. Dog? I'm sorry, that's just her attempt at a joke. Oh, why are you apologizing for me? Because I'm your friend, of course. I'm happy to hear that. You're my first best friend, you know? I didn't remember adding best to that phrase, but leaving that unsaid was probably a smart move here. Well, I learned that much, so I must have been growing used to her. I guess the word friend I'd spoken just now wasn't entirely sarcastic. I'd like to smother you with hugs and kisses right away, but I need to finish examining Kaneda-san, so let's save it for after. Please take your time. Well, where were we? Oh, right. Kaneda-san. Were you ever physically abused as a child? Never. Ever dropped on the floor by your mother? What does this have to do with anything? Then this accident is the cause of your squint. Don't worry, I think it'll heal. Alright, next. Oh, makes sense to me. Kazuki continued her examinations along these lines, eventually working her way through all the girls, even those with no apparent injury. And that girl was the last one. There were some people with bruises indicating light internal bleeding, but for the most part we've only got minor scrapes. Hiruka-san is definitely the worst off. The tibia and fibula of her left leg are broken, and her right leg has a compound fracture of the distal femur. Both are closed fractures, so there's no need to worry about bacterial infection. And I set the bones as best I could, but she needs to go to a hospital. Sakurai-san's stomach was also pretty bad. The wound itself was large, so it appeared very serious, but it wasn't deep enough to damage her internal organs. Now that it's sutured, she should be alright. The biggest concern there is infection. If possible, she needs antibiotics administered at the hospital. For the moment, please tell the captain that we've done what we can for her. Being stuck in the middle of a fissure and a hole in the earth. You want me to tell her? Of course, why do you think I made you tag along as I played doctor? Even using the same words to describe the same situation, people receive them differently depending on who speaks them. Well, the last thing we needed was Kazuki's harsh tone setting off a fight. You should have asked the captain to please explain the situation to Mr. Ochi. That ought to be enough of an achievement to keep her from going into a sulk and making a nuisance of herself. There you go again. You really can't help yourself, can you? I'm actually holding back quite a bit, you know. Kazami-san? At that moment, I realized something for the first time. Kazuki's face was flushed red, her breathing was rough, and she was sweating heavily. What's wrong? You don't look so good. It's my arm. Kazuki raised her left arm as she spoke, revealing it to be heavily swollen and purple. Huh? Wait a... What happened to this? It doesn't seem to be broken, but I believe there's a crack in the bone. A partial fracture, as they call them. Your left arm. No way. Isn't that what I stepped on the bus? Did I do this? A seatbelt did it. Just before the accident, my arm was tangled in the strap, and the shock of the impact did the rest. Even if we accept the hypothetical possibility that you trampling on it was the final straw, it's hardly your fault that the accident itself occurred and created such a situation now, is it? That's true, but if I hadn't kept sitting on top of you like that, you're worrying too much. Say, did I start ranting at you that this is all your fault? Could you lop off your own arm and hand it over? Sorry. That's not even possible. Then it's not worth troubling yourself over. I certainly don't intend to blame you. Don't get depressed, I'm really truly not upset. Goodness. Should I put things a little more gently? Are you alright? It hurts, but not bad enough to make me cry involuntarily. And I'm not quite childish enough as to start blubbering about it to distract myself from the pain. I'm sorry. Are you the type who can't calm down unless there's someone around to punish you? Very well then, let's say you owe me a debt for this left arm. Debt? At a time of my choosing, you must obey whatever orders I give you. I'll forgive you if you promise me that. You can just tell me now. I'll do what you want. Not good enough. A debt is always more profitable when you postpone the collection. Remember that. Don't worry too much. I don't intend to extort heavy interest payments from a friend. Kazuki's expression as she spoke those words was an artificially perfect smile, suggesting a kind of maturity well beyond her years. As I watched her face, I felt sticky sweat seeping out of the back of my head. Did I really just put myself at the mercy of a person like this? Our basketball team's advisor, Mr. Ochi Yoshihiko, regained consciousness 30 minutes later. After hearing a brief summary of the situation from Captain Sakashida, Mr. Ochi called for all the surviving students and had us sit on the ground together. In the first place, what was the cause of the accident? Just as we were still in the classroom, Captain Sakashida raised her right hand as she spoke. At her nearly accusatory tone, our young teacher and the driver of the bus wrinkled his face into something very close to a scowl. Don't know. I braked hard as soon as the wheel went out of control, but the thing just went right over the cliff. Probably a blowout. Then what caused the blowout? How the hell would I know? I just woke up minutes ago. Please don't shout. Everyone's terrified. You need to stay calm or... I know that! A worthless argument along the lines continued for a good 10 minutes. The situation being what it was, nobody tried to butt in or calm things down. We all sat there and waited for things to run their course. Watching our teacher and captain bellowing at each other meaninglessly, a few girls began to cry from sheer anxiety. The captain seized on that fact as a new line of attack. In that place filled with gloom and dominated by angry voices, Kazami Kazuki smiled brightly, drew her face close, and began to whisper in my ear. Good lord, even at a time like this, all she can think about is getting someone else to take up responsibility? Surely assigning blame and identifying the cause can wait. Aren't there many more important things we should be discussing? True enough, but I couldn't understand what she expected to accomplish by murmuring this to me. It wasn't like I had the ability to redirect the discussion. Complaining wasn't going to get us anywhere. If anything, there was a good chance this might make the situation even worse. You two. What are you whispering about? See, I told you so. When you get spotted griping in the shadows, of course you're going to get told off. Well, as I hesitated, searching for some kind of excuse, Kazuki abruptly raised her right hand and asked for permission to speak. In regard to the cause of the blowout, I think it's likely that sharp metal object of some sort fell from the bed of a truck carrying scrap, then lodged in the front wheel of our bus. Do you have evidence of that? Please take a look at the tire in question. As directed by Kazuki's words, everyone present turned to look at the tires of the overturned bus. The front wheel on the right side was neatly torn around its circumference, cracked in 2 vertical halves. Yeah, that would probably cause it. So he drove over something, a sharp metal board or something of the sort. Perhaps it was dragged by the tire and caught in the frame of the vehicle, so that every time the tire rotated it was successfully damaged, finally culminating in a sudden burst. Watching Kazuki explain her theory with words and gestures, the majority of us felt the pieces falling into place. It made sense. Modern car tires are made so they won't rapidly lose air pressure from running over a nail, but if a piece of metal slowly tears it apart, this is the inevitable result. Furthermore, having unfortunately run over that object, we didn't crash through any fault of Mr. Orochi's. If we'd been on a straight road when the tire blew out, he would have brought us safely to a halt. If you want to assign blame, the fact that the tire happened to blow out as we were rounding a curve, in other words, sheer bad luck, is most responsible for the accident. Having met with this terrible luck, at the very least, those of us gathered here are still alive. Perhaps we should place our emphasis on how to preserve that silver lining of good fortune. What can we possibly do in this situation? We can at least attempt to ward off despair, can't we? In other words, I think a positive dialogue in search of hope would be lovely right about now. Rather than grieving over your poverty, fantasize about what you'll buy if you win the lottery. You'll sleep better at night. That was Kazuki's argument in a nutshell. Although if she said it outright, it was obvious she would have angered the captain. And so at Kazuki's request, I took my notebook in one hand and repeated the details of our situation to the group. We were surrounded by a dense sea of trees without so much as an animal trail running through it. The cliffs hung over us like an overturned mortar bowl, making a climb back to the road impossible. And our cell phones couldn't find a signal. To escape alive, our only option was to walk away from the road and into the forest, but probably because of a meteorite that fell nearby. There seemed to be dense deposits of metal scattered throughout the area. And thanks to these pockets of concentrated magnetic material, our compasses would be of no use. It seemed plausible that the strange hole with its overhanging walls had been gouged into the earth by the impact of that meteorite. The bare rock of the walls had turned to glass under the assault of the momentary high temperature. After reading out this dry, factual summary of our situation from the notebook was enough to drain my spirits. Where exactly were we supposed to find hope in any of this? If it's that bad, rather than messing around and consuming our physical strength, we'd be better off calmly waiting for a rescue. Yes, I think that's the best as well. Although I want to escape this disturbing place as quickly as possible, there was no guarantee that any of us would return alive if we wandered off aimlessly now. Continuing the investigation of our surroundings until a more certain path presented itself, while waiting for the arrival of a rescue, seemed the wiser choice by far. I felt a wave of relief wash through my body at the captain's decision. Oh, I don't know about that. Kazami Kazuki, the very person who shoved me onto this little stage, had spoken those words. Kazuki, the very person who had told me to explain things clearly and logically, so no one acts rashly, had disrupted the decision just as we were beginning to reach a consensus. I couldn't begin to understand why. I glanced at her face with an irrepressible frown. And what was that supposed to mean? Do you have a counter-argument? I do. It's certainly true we have no guarantee we will return alive if you wander off aimlessly. However, we also have no guarantee that we will be rescued if we simply wait. I'm aware of that, thank you. I don't intend to wait here for the rest of my life, but don't you think marching off in the jungle without adequate investigation is suicide? By what standard would you determine when your investigation is adequate? We don't have ample drinking water, let alone food. I don't think we have much time to sit around and plan things over. In my humble opinion, we might as well get moving while our physical and mental state is still favorable. With an opinion like that, you really should be humble. The mountains are a great deal harsher than amateurs like us tend to think. But if you dislike my decision, please feel free to head into the forest by yourself. I said too much. Allow me to apologize. Fine, as long as you've got the message. It was unexpected to hear Kazuki raise an objection in the first place, so it was just as surprising to see her withdraw her opinion so easily. Still holding my silence, I asked Kazuki a question with my gaze. What was all that about? In response to my glance, Kazuki returned her own wordless answer with the movement of rising the jerk of her chin. Don't worry about it. Keep going. Then our next priority should probably be establishing a base camp. How about we begin by working on retrieving anything that might be useful from the overturned bus? That seems about right. Let's divide the work and begin at once. Is that acceptable, Mr. Rochi? Yeah, let's get started. After that, we were divided between a group collecting things from the bus and a group responsible for sorting those items and preparing to erect our tents. We set about our work in silence. I was assigned to the collection team because of my sturdy physique, which meant I was stuck with the job of crawling into the overturned bus and dragging out whatever luggage I could find. The work itself wasn't difficult in the physical sense, but inside the bus, the bodies of the two girls who had died instantly were still left untouched. And every time I passed by, I couldn't help but see resentment on their faces. Chewing my lower lip, I forced out the willpower to go on. Although I wasn't conscious of it, the strain on my nerves built with every trip. Finally, the dim interior of the bus was all but emptied of luggage, with the exception of the personal belongings of the dead. Probably because I passed the corpses so many times now, I'd grown somewhat used to their expressions of bitter regret. Or maybe it would be more accurate to say that my emotions have been paralyzed. And so I joined my hands before the body of Shikanai Tsukasa, my senior by 2 years, and whispering "I'm sorry," pulled her luggage free. How goes it? Was the shriek really necessary? Now my ears hurt. Kazami-san, you startled me. Don't just start talking to me all of a sudden. Is there a way to begin talking to someone that isn't sudden? What is it? You need something? I had nothing better to do, so I came to help strip the bodies of their belongings. Do you have to put it like that? It's not as if they can hear us. As she spoke, Kazuki gently closed one of the body's eyelids. The other body? Over there, Ozawa-senpai, a second year. Ozawa? Oh, the one who was struggling to control her figure? What? Why don't you just come out and say she was fat? If I said it like that, I'd hurt her feelings. It's not like she can hear us. Oh my, I do believe you're going to hell for that one. This coming from you of all people? Me? I'm in church every Sunday morning. Huh? Really? Oh, I get it. Should I laugh now? Too late. Leave Fatty to me. You go ahead and take that luggage outside. Fatty, she says. Kazuki was a truly elusive person. At times she reversed herself with dizzying speed. Has she seen that I was depressed and turned this black humor to make me smile? That reminds me. Why'd you suddenly disagree with the captain just now? That wasn't what we planned. That. Did you see the captain's face back then? What about it? She looked perfectly content as long as you were merely explaining our situation, but as soon as you began to direct the discussion, her expression became extremely sullen. Therefore, before she could develop some ridiculous need to resist our argument, I decided to provide my own opposition. I didn't want to interject it. She would inevitably snap back at me. If I then allowed her to win the argument, her mood would improve for the moment. So that was all just... If I hadn't butted in at that point, I believe that down the line, say 3 days after our food supplies grow uncertain, she would have thrown the towel and proposed an attempt to escape. But if she were to reverse her opinion now that she's pushed it over mine, it would become an admission that I was correct all along. The captain's obstinacy towards Kazuki had become a powerful reason for her to keep us where we were. You were thinking that far ahead? When you consider things from a long-term perspective, losing can sometimes be a profitable choice. Although it may seem difficult to think even a moment ahead in a situation like this. Try to act while imagining yourself 10 days from now. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating when you're around. Is that so? But then again, life is short and you only get one try. It can't hurt to try getting to know a genius, can it? Genius, is it? You actually call yourself a genius? Not that I like to hear it from others, as I'm sure you would dislike being called an idiot, but nonetheless dispraise yourself as just an idiot in order to put people off their guard. But I really am an idiot. No, you're not. True idiots are those who make enemies of geniuses. Or friends, if I remember correctly. But of course. I must say, I like how quick you are in the uptake. Very kind of you. What the heck? Geez, seriously. I must be something like a toy to her. I did feel discomfort at the effortless control she had over me, but I'm sure Kazuki knew as well as I did that I wouldn't oppose her in the end. That realization was irritating in its own right, but truthfully by this point I got myself so aggravated that I felt like smiling instead. Heaving a loud sigh of surrender, I turned my attention back to stripping the dead girl of her possessions. It took an hour to retrieve all the camping gear and personal belongings from the overturned bus. But now I had to face a difficult question. What do we do about the 2 bodies still in the bus? That was the problem. Somebody raised the idea of having everybody carry them out together, but considering the cramped interior of the bus, it would be impossible for all of us to participate. Someone else suggested that we just leave them be, rather than clumsily dragging them around, but at Kazuki's words, it's hot today, isn't it? How long does it take for a corpse to begin rotting, I wonder? And I'm assuming it's getting hotter within the bus on top of that, so... I'm guessing that's why they're at least... I'm guessing they're at least gonna get pulled out of the bus, right? They'll probably start rotting quicker if left in the bus, I'm pretty sure, now that I think about it. After a few minutes, when Ochi placed his hands on his knees and stood with the words, "I'll do it," every one of us breathed a sigh of pure relief. Damn, Ochi. Having entered the overturned bus alone, Mr. Ochi emerged with Shikanai's body cradled in his arms. The only ones who witnessed that moment were Kazuki, Captain Sakashita, and me. The others cast their eyes to the ground or turned away, avoiding the sight of their acquaintance's corpse. Probably because that sight was the distillation of a pitiless reality. To see that moment would have meant facing the truth they wanted so desperately to forget. To be honest, when I was collecting luggage from the bus, I had placed a hand on Shikanai's body with the thought of carrying it outside. Startled to learn exactly how cold a human body could become when its blood stopped flowing, I withdrew my hand instantly. I hadn't felt this kind of shock when I touched my grandmother's body in the casket at her funeral. Grandma's death, which I'd known would come eventually, wasn't nearly that cold to the touch. Touching this girl's death, a death I couldn't view with composure or resignation, turned my spine to ice. I didn't ever want to feel that way. Ever again. Watching the removal of bodies in solemn silence, I reflexively brought my hands together and began to pray for the dead. From behind my back, I could hear whispering voices. That body. What do we do with it now? Bury it somewhere, I guess. Can we just do that? When a rescue, won't her family be mad? We can't assume help will arrive right away. We can't just leave it like this. It's summer after all. I was gonna suggest maybe just burning it. And then my mind went somewhere else, and... Okay, I think they'd probably honestly be disgusted, the group of students, if we just suggested cannibalism. They'd probably flip out if we just suggest eat the dead students. Yeah, I do think maybe that is going a little too far. Okay, so Ochi decided to bury the bodies. At the very least, it wouldn't do to leave them where we could see them. Practically speaking, if we watched those corpses rot before our eyes, we would have put our mental health at risk. Yeah, that would probably really just traumatize you, mentally speaking. Having to watch your friend's corpse decomposing in front of you for like however many days. Yeah, just having literally nothing else you can do besides watching that would definitely take a toll on your psyche. In a situation like this one, panic is the greatest enemy. For the same reason, we decided it would be best if none of us acted alone. We paired off into units of 2. To put things nicely, the idea was to establish a dynamic of mutual support. When you get to the heart of the matter, we were supposed to watch each other like hawks for signs of abnormal behavior. If one member of the pair caused a problem, both would be held responsible. Well, I'd been 80% sure it would turn out this way from the moment I heard about the rule. Kazami Kazuki named me her partner. The look on her face saying was the most natural thing in the world. That's that. My best regards once again. As she spoke, Kazuki moved to show me her left arm, now wrapped in a sling. Her meaning was clear enough. My arm was disabled thanks to you, so it's only natural to pick up the slack from me, right? I didn't have any objection to acting as a unit with Kazuki. Judging from her words and actions so far, she was intelligent and knowledgeable. If I followed her lead, things shouldn't go wrong. Even so, I can't quite repress my feelings. Something like dissatisfaction or maybe confusion? Above all, I was tired of dancing so obediently on her strings. If you have a reason for choosing me other than a desire to bully me, could you tell me what it is? I chose you so I could bully you. If you have complaints, I'll listen. Not that I'll respond to them anyway. What's the point of complaining then? It'll help with your stress. If you want to live a long life, you shouldn't bury your resentments away. All the more so in a situation like this. Oh, that a fact? Any other questions? Is teasing me really that much fun? How odd. Why are you asking a question when you don't want to hear the answer? Are you the type who needs it put into words to get a thrill? This is a little hard to say, so I'll put it gently. You're a born masochist. What the fuck? I really shouldn't have asked. Don't worry, I happen to be a born sadist. I'm positive we'll get along. With those words, Kazuki held out her uninjured right arm toward me. Unable to immediately understand the meaning of her gesture, I stared blankly back in her face. You have to put out your hand too. I can't shake hands by myself. I see. A handshake? I'm amazed you think of something so commonplace, Kazami-san. You can call me Kazuki-san. Mind if I call you Amane-chan in return? Huh? Okay. I can't believe I just never even brought this up right now. Like, Amane used to look like such a dork, especially to compare, like, what she looks like here to, like, what she looks like present day. Yeah, she lost the glasses sometime after the, like, surviving the whole bus crash. Not to mention, like, the way she, like, has done her hair. Yeah, Amane just looks like such a dork. I don't know what else to say. And then she got super hot a couple years later. Yes, my best regards to you as well, Kazuki-chan. I gripped Kazuki's outstretched hand with as much force as I could muster. Her hand was so small, it felt like I could quite literally crush it if I squeezed hard enough. And yet, even then, when like all I could see ahead of us was uncertainty and danger, I had the feeling that small hand would save me. We'll now distribute food and tents. Striding her way to an unsteady foothold above us, the captain shouted in a voice that resounded off the walls of rock. At her feet, the food and camping equipment we had dragged out of the bus were piled in a heap. 2 people per tent, 1 sleeping bag per person. We're distributing 3 days worth of food for the moment. It can't be called an adequate amount, but everyone try to ration yourselves. Make it last 3 days. In the dark cloud of bad luck, there was a bus accident. Our meager silver lining of good fortune was that we had been returning from a camping trip. Oh, so that's why they were bringing food. As well as leftover ingredients from the meal we'd made the day before. A variety of camping equipment also. There are 4 tents designed for 3 occupants and 1 large tent made for 6. Kazuki and I took one of the smaller tents, 2 sleeping bags and a mat for both of us. Our rations for the 3-day period were distributed to us in a garbage bag. It's currently 5:14 p.m. Please finish constructing your tents by 6 and eat your dinner by 6:30. After that, it's free time, but don't take any arbitrary actions and inconvenience those around you. Understood? As she spoke, the captain glanced briefly around the group, then brought her gaze to a halt on Kazuki, who was standing at my side. That last understood was probably directed at her in particular. Did she not notice Captain Sakashida's hostile attitude? Did she notice and play dumb on purpose? Whatever the case. Okay. Kazuki answered in a high-pitched girly tone that seemed to originate from her nose. Goodness, what's she so grumpy about? Kazami-san, what was with that voice just now? Gross. She's already piling on me too? I don't particularly care what a girl I hate thinks of me, but if even you talk like that, my feelings will get hurt like anyone else's. Huh? I'm sorry. Well then, as punishment, would you set up our tent? Oh yeah, I was going to do that anyway. In exchange, I'll get dinner ready. Although I've never done anything of the sort before. Huh? Her ingredients are carrots, potatoes, and onions. This has to be leftovers from the curry yesterday, right? There's some powder too, but not very much. What to do? Hold on a second, those ingredients are precious. Can you really handle this? Well, cooking is basically just boiling, baking, or steaming, right? I'm sure it won't be a problem. No, that's really okay. I'll do it. Leave that to me. But you're putting up the tent. It's fine. My home's a restaurant, so cooking is one thing I actually have some confidence in. Really? But I feel a little bad having you do all the work. Okay, once I get the tent up, shall we cook together? Can you help out with the tent? Sounds nice. Kind of feels like a close friend thing. Right? By the way, can you cook without using salt? What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. You cook without using salt. But there is some salt in here, look. I'm saying that I want to avoid using that as much as possible. Can you do it? It won't taste much good, you know? Let's just put up with that, okay? If you say so. After erecting our tent, I gave saltless cooking a try as Kazuki requested. Cooking the onions in a fry pan, I mixed them together with smashed steamed potatoes and flavored the mix with pepper. Then molded it into an oval and baked it in butter, pretty much making it up as I went along. What would you even call this thing? A potato burger? A croquette with a meat or sauce? Anyway, kind of an unorthodox result. Although I was frankly a little wary myself, it was pretty good when I actually ate it. And Kazuki also happily praised the taste. By some mysterious psychological process, I found that Kazuki's praise motivated me to try hard next time as well. Ridiculous as it may sound, I'm fairly sure it was being to genuinely like this girl named Kazami Kazuki. When the sun set, the sultry heat and humidity of the day vanished quickly, giving way to a chilly night. Nonetheless, I hadn't entered my tent yet. My agitation with this overwhelming barrage of events hadn't yet cooled, so I wasn't exactly sleepy. And I think I may have still been slightly resistant to the idea of entering that tent alone with Kazami Kazuki. When I looked up, there was a slight sliver of moonlight working its way to us through a gap in the treetops. Amidst the darkness at the bottom of the ravine, I could just make out the dome shapes of our tents here and there. The only one in which a light was burning was the largest tent. The 6-person tent was occupied by our advisor, Mr. Ochi, along with the wounded Hiruka-san and Sakurai-san. The dim light of a lantern projected the movements of the inhabitants as shadows on the wall, and an agonized moaning leaked from the inside. It was a voice like that of a damned soul crawling through hell. Probably Hiruka-san and her fractured legs. When Kazuki went to check on her after dinner, Hiruka-san had been bathed in greasy sweat. The entire time we were there, she kept up a low groaning cry, never managing coherent speech. The fractures had given rise to an agonizing fever. She had no method of coping with her suffering except to scream and moan. Knowing that we had to get her to a hospital as soon as possible, I also knew we had been placed in circumstances where we could do nothing but wait for help. Frustrated and impatience boiled up inside me. The food was expected to last 3 days, which meant at the very least, she intended to have us spend 3 days here. But what was to come after that? What happened if 3 days passed and no one arrived to save us? As worsening tremors of anxiety crawled up their way up my spine, I shivered for reasons unrelated to the temperature of my body. Our bus had fallen. Some of us had already died. But even so, something in the core of my mind seemed to be anesthetized against the truth. None of it felt truly real. That sense of numbness was what frightened me the most. What should we do? How do we survive this? No matter how frantically I tried to find answers, my mind was paralyzed, dominated by a single thought. We can't do anything. What will be, will be. As if rejecting the hopeless situation it had found itself in, my brain was simply refusing to think. That refusal of reality may have been a common phenomenon among us that night. From some other tent in the area, I can heard the incongruous sound of brightly laughing voices. That laughter grated badly on my nerves, so I couldn't help but turn my head towards the sound in irritation. Perhaps Kazuki sitting next to me felt the same way. As she likewise turned her gaze toward the laughter, there was a scowl on her face. Hey, Kazami-san. Kazuki is fine. I think I told you that already, didn't I? Kazuki. Yes, Amane. What are you thinking about right now? Nothing in particular. I was just reading a book. A book? There's nothing in Kazuki's hands. Even if there had somehow been a book there, it would have been impossible to read in the darkness. Did I not mention this to you yet? If I see the contents of a book, I can store them in my memory as an image. It's a simple matter of consciously interpreting the characters later on. I can read whenever I please. Huh? Sorry, I don't get it. What are you saying? Imagine as a camera taking pictures of the pages of an open book. Later you can read the contents from those photographs. That's simple enough, yes? I have 144 unread books in my head at present. I was just working on one now. What the heck was I supposed to say to that? Could the geniuses of the world all do things like this? That was the wrong way to look at it. It's probably precisely when you can do something so utterly removed from the capabilities of other people that you deserve to be called a genius. I was confident there was simply no way I could ever pull off something like that, no matter how well she explained it to me. What kind of book are you reading? A fiction novel in which 15 students of mixed gender are trapped in a school that's been destroyed by an earthquake. The setting of student survivors in a closed space was similar to our current situation. I started reading it in hope it might be of reference, but unfortunately no good. I didn't gain any particularly useful information. On the point of asking about the ending of that novel, I abruptly clamped my mouth shut. Most likely the students in that story were wiped out. That was probably the exact reason Kazuki vaguely described it as not particularly useful. Kazuki turned her face to me with a sleepy expression, admittedly her default state, stifled a small yawn and mumbled it would be 10 soon without a glance at any clock or watch. We don't have anything to do. Shall we sleep? Oh, yeah. Just being awake with nothing to do would invite unproductive, depressing thoughts. I understood that, but I simply wasn't sleepy. Indifferent to any minor dilemma, Kazuki stood up immediately and opened the zipper dividing the entrance to our tent. Hey, Kazuki. Yes? Aren't you scared? That's a good question. I've actually been holding on to an answer to this one for a while now. Feel like hearing it? The bus meeting an accident, forming a pair with you, and you asking me this question at this moment, all of this was within the scope of my predictions. Huh? What do you think? I thought it sounded pretty impressive and genius-like, personally. I was kind of intending that as a serious question, you know? Precisely why I answered seriously. Let's sleep. I expect tomorrow will be a busy day in its own right. With those words, Kazuki dropped all fours and began to burrow her way into the tent like a bear returning to its den. In a blank daze, I watched Kazuki's round butt wiggling under her skirt as she disappeared inside. I found myself alone, trying and failing to process the meaning of her words. I think that just brought out all the fatigue. Confronted with the reality of Kazami Kazuki, a girl who had looked at first as if she wasn't thinking at all. A girl who had kept her thoughts completely unreadable. I found myself feeling ridiculous in comparison. The way I drowned myself in anxious worrying, the way I worked myself into a panic over things I had no control over. Left alone in that dark and silent place, I strained my ears. Haruka-san's moans which ate into the heart of the listener, and the voices of laughter with their grating denial of our danger. Both had stopped for now. The occasional rustling of trees in the wind and the voices of insects were the only sounds left to echo against the walls of rock. The second day in the valley. That morning I awoke to the eerie song of distant birds. I had burrowed into my sleeping bag and closed my eyes, fully expecting to lie awake all night, but evidently I must have dozed off at some point. When I forced open my unexpectedly heavy eyelids, I found the interior of our cheap blue tent illuminated by a slanting ray of morning sun. Thankfully, the temperature had risen with the dawn. I must have slept for at least a few hours, but the burden of my fatigue was no lighter. If anything, I felt even more exhausted than I had the night before. Still wrapped in my sleeping bag, I turned sideways on top of my thin silver mat. Twisting my head toward the other side of the tent, I was surprised to find my roommate missing. Kazuki? Where could she have wandered off to? The mat and sleeping bag Kazuki had been using sat on the ground next to me, neatly tied together in a tight roll. From the look of things, it was unlikely she was just stepped out to use the bathroom. Kazuki was clearly already awake and taking action. I crawled outside the tent to a cleared sky but dim morning. The sheer cliffs to our right and left intercepted most of the sun's light. What little reached us filtered down through gaps in the thick vegetation far above. No doubt the same reason it felt oddly chilly for a summer day. Others had already emerged from their tents into the gloomy dawn. Here and there they sat quietly on the hard stone ground. In addition to the trauma and the mental exhaustion of the previous day, we'd slept in an unfamiliar environment. Not the best way to get rested and refreshed. Most had barely slept at all, judging from the dark circles under their eyes. Hey, have you seen Kazuki? I called out to a freshman from the neighboring tent, Ibuki Haruna, seated some 3 meters away. Ibuki brushed her long bangs out of her eyes with her fingers and responded listlessly. Kazuki? Oh, you mean Kazami-san? She headed off toward the forest carrying a shovel. Maybe she's relieving herself? Oh. I turned toward the valley's lone exit, the tangle of vegetation I called a forest. But Kazuki was nowhere in sight. I did, however, happen to notice someone acting rather oddly a little way off. What's she doing over there? Who knows? It was Sakuma Minori, a third-year senior. She was a talented athlete, particularly skilled at sinking three-pointers, who earned the title of scoring queen in their team. At the moment, she was repeatedly hurling a small object straight up into the air. If you're that curious, why don't you go ask yourself? I really don't want to deal with her crap. Ibuki didn't bother to lower her voice. She didn't seem to care whether her frank words might reach the ears of our senior. As a result of last night's discussion, she'd been paired with that very Sakuma-senpai and was stuck sharing a tent with her for the duration of our stay here. The combination seemed logical enough since Ibuki and Sakuma had been sharing a room as boarder students, but room assignments in a dorm were arbitrary, arranged for the convenience of the school. As in most boarding schools, the freshmen tended to moan about running chores for their arrogant older roommates, while seniors complained about being expected to clean up after some clueless brat. If you're stuck living in the same room for an extended period of time, the reasonable thing would be to deal with your differences and find a way to get along. But it seems things aren't that simple, particularly for girls. And the roommates who disliked each other most tended to be exactly the ones who were kept together when rooms were reassigned the next year. It wasn't just coincidence either. From what I heard, our school deliberately tried to create awkward combinations as a sneaky way of maintaining discipline. Letting friends clump together naturally leads to cliques and group attempts to skirt the rules. In turn, this can create sharp divisions between those who want peace and quiet in the dorm and those who want to enjoy themselves. Sometimes these would end in nasty squabbles. In other words, the mixing of oil and water personalities in individual rooms prevented larger scale problems, or so I'd heard. As someone who commuted to school, it was a bit hard for me to understand dorm politics. Sakuma-senpai, what have you been doing for the last few minutes? Oh, if it ain't Amane. Nothing much. Take a look at this. Sakuma held out the small object she'd been hurling repeatedly into the sky. Specifically, it was her cell phone. She'd been repeating a simple pattern of action, throwing it straight up with all her might, retrieving it on the way back down, then throwing it right back up again. On closer examination, the body of the phone was battered and covered in fine cracks. She probably dropped it numerous times by now. Had this idea last night right before I fell asleep, you know? If I throw the phone into the sky while trying to send a message, it might just pick up a signal and get us some help. That was a thought, at least. I've been trying it out all morning. There we go! With a fluid overhand motion, Sakuma launched the cell phone into the sky once again. That's actually a really clever idea. I know, right? I thought so too, but whoops. Skillfully catching the cell phone as it plunged back to Earth, she flipped on the screen and checked the status of the transmission. Another failure, huh? I've thrown it up a good 50 times by now, but it hasn't worked even once. I guess Kazami must have been right after all. Kazuki? What did she say? We're in a remote area with crappy reception to start out with. Even on the off chance I manage to throw it just barely into range, it's not going to do any good if it falls back down before it can send any data. Or so she told me. why not toss the phone on top of a cliff so it can't fall back down? I thought that as well. I've been trying to get it on top of that cliff for a while now, but I can't get it up that far. Although I couldn't tell the exact height of the cliff she was aiming for, a conservative estimate would be 50 meters. And since the wall sloped over us, some fairly precise aim would be required to land on top. Yeah, you'd likely break it before you get it on top anyways. Plus, there's no guarantee the top of the cliff would be in range either. I suppose not. I've hit on the idea of making a crude sling out of a towel or something to throw the phone over the cliff, but it was true enough. There was no evidence we'd be accomplishing anything even if it worked. If there wasn't any signal up there either, we'd end up throwing away a valuable potential means of communication for nothing. And yet Takuma was keeping at her task relentlessly, probably mostly for the sake of having something to do. She seemed to know full well it was essentially hopeless. So by the way, have you seen Kazuki recently? Kazami wandered off into the forest with this big old shovel a while ago. Maybe 30 minutes now? If she's doing her business out there, she's sure taking her time. I think I'm gonna go check up on her. Better be careful. If you do, I went to the forest a little while ago myself, but there's no trail or anything, no real landmarks either. It's just a sea of trees, so it's incredibly easy to get lost. Make sure to leave very clear signs to mark your path, alright? I understand, I'll be careful. It had already been half an hour since Kazuki entered the forest? Definitely way too long for a bathroom break. It was hard to imagine Kazami Kazuki of all people making such a careless blunder, but there was a possibility she lost her bearings and wandered off in the wrong direction. I cautiously made my way into the forest, using the blade of a candelabra to mark tree trunks with arrows as I went. I tried shouting her name, but there was no reply. I studied the ground at my feet. Although crushed vegetation made it clear that some of us had been in this area recently, the trails were indistinct. Not that I could tell which belonged to Kazuki in the first place. When I glanced behind me, I found the route I trampled through the high grass was still very clear by comparison. Surprisingly, however, it was a meandering zigzag, probably the result of constantly winding my way around trees. I thought I was walking perfectly straight, too. This is what makes the wilderness a truly terrifying place. I thought I had a pretty good sense of the dangers of wild mountains from books and comics, but now that I was actually experiencing one, I was quickly coming to realize how badly mistaken I'd been. I'd gone in believing that getting lost in the woods would generally work out for the best, as long as you reacted appropriately. That naive thought dissolved in mere minutes inside the jungle. In an environment utterly barren of any trace of other human beings, your sense of isolation quickly builds some anxiety. It becomes easier to rush into action based on unfounded, optimistic assumptions. It's gotta be this way. It was probably over there. Shying away from acknowledging worst-case scenario, running around on your intuition alone, you'd become truly and hopelessly lost. In time, your anxiety reaches a new stage. Am I simply wasting my energy wandering around in circles? And even worse fear, because it's paralyzing, you're frozen where you stand, trapped with your own slowly escalating terror. And eventually the fear of death creeps up on you, breaking your courage and robbing you of reason. In the end, just such an outcome is entirely likely. Kazuki! Where are you? It hadn't been 10 minutes since I entered the forest, and I could already feel myself trembling. I'd begun to sink into the first stage, powerful anxiety in my own isolation. I screamed Kazuki's name for the second time, a little louder than before. What should I do? Maybe it would be smart to return for now while I still know the way back, then launch an organized search for someone else. But just as those thoughts were running through my head, I heard the rustling sound of someone stepping their way through the high grass a few paces behind me. My body went stiff with shock. I spun around to find that Kazami Kazuki had materialized out of nowhere, the usual vaguely sleepy expression on her face. Kindly refrain from shouting my name so loudly. It'd be quite the hassle if I ended up getting mobbed by my adoring fans. Yes, that's correct. The one and only Kazami Kazuki. If you're out for an autograph, please send a self-addressed stamped envelope to my manager's office. What? A self-addressed envelope? Oh look, that's the part where you would say, since when you were an idol or something. Otherwise the gag's gonna fall rather flat. Oh, right. Sorry. That's alright, I suppose. Can't say I was particularly proud of the joke myself. Kazuki, where'd you run off to? The bathroom, so to speak. But it seems I can't even sit back and relieve myself these days without being hounded. Very much an Oz dilemma, don't you think? Hence the joke. You were at it for 30 whole minutes? Since I was out here anyway, I took the opportunity to gather some plants that looked vaguely edible. See? Kazuki had out some small, unfamiliar vegetables. They seemed to be immature shoots of some leafy plant. I was searching in the hope there might be mountain herbs or something similar growing, but this was the most I could find. What is that stuff? Can you really eat it? Ostrich fern sprouts. They're technically edible raw, but boiling them would probably be wiser. First time I've seen these. Not that they look particularly tasty, since there's very little in the way of food. The woods are of course unable to support significant animal life. One does hear birdsong, but they keep themselves well concealed. On the bright side, I suppose we don't have to worry about being attacked by bears, but there's no getting around the fact we found ourselves in a spectacularly inhospitable environment. In any case, let's make do with these for our breakfast. I'll leave the cooking to you, but try to use as little seasoning as possible. We still got potatoes and carrots left, you know? We need to try conserving ingredients with a longer shelf life as much as possible. There's no guarantee we'll be able to escape this place within 3 days after all. Oh yeah, I guess you're right. No reason to take it so hard. We're certainly in a desperate situation, but it doesn't mean we're doomed. Will we get out of this? Who knows, not to dodge the question, but even I don't know that yet. Does a path to survival even exist? Yes, it does. What? What is it? Huh? What? There really is a way out, right? There is, yes, but that's a road we can't travel yet. We can't? What does that mean? It means we can't yet put the idea into practice. We wouldn't be able to. Not as we are now. Sorry. I'm an idiot, so I don't really get it. What do you mean we can't do it now? Like it'll become possible after enough time passes? That's exactly right, and of course there's still a possibility help will arrive. For the moment we can only sit still and hold out as best we can. What kind of idea is it? Give me a hint at least. Pop quiz. What do people need to survive? Water, for one thing. That's right, I forgot to mention that. When I was picking edible grasses earlier, I found a small mountain spring. In other words, no need to worry about our supply of drinking water. Water, huh? Hardly something to be so disappointed about. Given a steady supply of water, human beings can generally hold out a week or so. Even with precious little else. Can you report to the captain as your discovery? Sure, I guess. Alright then, shall we head back? I didn't hear the answer to your hint. What do people need to survive? I was referring to food. That's the key to getting out of this alive? That's correct, and therefore we need to eat as lightly as possible. If we make our food last, we'll all get out alive? I never said everyone would survive. Huh? Let's head back already. If we're away for too long, everyone will get worried. Oh, hey! Kazuki! It's quite alright. I remember the way back perfectly. Just follow me. Hold on just 1 minute. Wow, that's an awfully angry look on your face. What's got your knickers in a twist? Wow, you're soft. Not everyone will survive? What's that supposed to mean? I was simply acknowledging an unfortunate possibility if help arrives relatively early on. We will, of course, emerge from this with no further casualties. Then what if they don't come? That's a bridge to cross when we come to it. The rescue team should keep up their search for at least 5 days, perhaps as long as 2 weeks. If a week passes without help arriving, we can think the matter over at greater length as a group. Okay. No need to be so anxious. In all likelihood, you're going to survive. Why do you say that? You really need to ask? Because I chose you as my partner. Are you serious? Perfectly serious, of course. Well then, is the question and answer session finished now? Oh, yeah. Very well, let's be on our way. Hey! Don't just march off all of a sudden! What a troublesome young lady. If you're anxious and want to hold hands, just say so straight out. That's not really what I... Oh, is that so? I was just about to offer you my hand, but I guess that won't be necessary. I'll take you up on that. I'm sorry. Your voice was rather indistinct there. I want to hold hands! Please hold my hand, Kazuki-sama! That's a good girl. Come here, Amane-chan. Jeez, from now on, don't just wander off by yourself without a word. I was worried, you know? You were? About me? Well, yeah. Probably a little presumptuous for the likes of me to be worried about you. No, that's not what I meant. If anything, I suppose I was rather surprised by the idea of someone feeling concerned for me. But yes, you're right. I do apologize. Don't make that face, alright? You look like a child abandoned by its mother. Not to where I won't go off anywhere and leave you behind. You promise? Yes, I promise. Come, shall we return? Okay. At that moment, I realized I'd grown totally dependent on a diminutive girl, Kazami Kazuki. Wasn't used to leaning on others like a crutch. Clinging to someone usually made me feel more awkward than anything else, but that day, the distinct warmth of Kazuki's small hand was very reassuring. You've got cold hands, Amane. Ah, sorry. That's quite alright. They remind me of my mother's in that respect. Please, do feel free to call me Mommy. Oh my, you've learned to give back a little. Alright, so... tempted to just leave it here for now. And of course, I'm going to be continuing reading the backstory of Amane in the next stream if I just leave it here now. So it's been like 91 minutes, and so 91 minutes and some odd seconds, so I guess I will leave it here. Alright, so be it. Yeah, when I go do Amane Route Part 6, we'll still be in the backstory where Amane is just stranded after the bus crash with her basketball team.